I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is I Was 8, a weekly storytelling podcast about growing up in a small town on the prairies. These things happened, mostly as told. In next week's episode, the great Canadian tradition of cribbage makes an appearance. But now, car trip. Let's move on with Season 2 of I Was 8.
Chapter 9. Going to PA.
PA is what we called Prince Albert, the nearest big city to our small town, Waukau, Saskatchewan. As small towns go, we were the biggest small town in the area. We had 1,000 people. The town had a hockey arena, a bank, a movie theater, a lumberyard, a hotel, 2.5 grocery stores, a hospital, 7 churches. We were bustling, baby. We were the center of our school district. We were the center of the universe, the Waukau universe. Even though the town was built on a simple grid, we were so big, for a small town, that it was technically possible to get lost in our burg. That's how big our small town was. Well, this I'd overheard, that many of the men got lost at the local pub on the way home from work or the store. That's what Mom said. Many of the nearby towns weren't even really towns at all, but villages. Even at 8, I was beginning to learn about echelons, due order, and hierarchy. I live in a nearby town. No, you don't. It's not a town. It's not even a village. It's a hamlet. Ha-ha, hamlets, villages, towns. There was no doubt we were the town, but we weren't the city. You had to leave the Waukau universe to get to Prince Albert. Prince Albert was the city, and we called it PA. You know, like all cool big world cities where you only have to use the initials KC, NYC, LA, PA. We used to go to PA about once a month on a Saturday, and though many of Dad's brothers and sisters lived there, we didn't really go to visit. We went to shop. Shop for things you couldn't get even in our fantastic big small town. Things that one could only get in the big city, at Big City Savings. When a PA Saturday was in the works, I was so excited. I loved going to the big city. The only bad thing was the car trip took forever. Forever. By rough estimate, relying partly on memory, forever equaled about 45 minutes. Now, that was 45 minutes straight through. We never went straight through. We always stopped in this other town on the way called St. Louis. There was a pub in St. Louis, and Dad always had to see a guy about a thing in St. Louis. He owed the guy some money, or the guy owed him some money, something. So Mom and I would wait in the car while Dad went in, split a tray of draft with some guy, and they talked about the thing. I mean, come on, walk out of PA, 45 minutes. You can't expect a man to do it in one stretch. Take a break for a few beers. Yeah, I know. Somehow, we all lived. Now, St. Louis to PA was a fairly short jaunt, and I knew we were minutes away from the big city when we passed this massive cemetery, and Dad would say, "Hey, Larry, you know how many people are dead there?" "No, how many?" "All of them." I either forgot the joke month to month, or eventually just always played along. I can't remember which. It wasn't like me to forget a joke. I think I just let Dad have his laugh. What did I care? We were almost there. I was giddy. Slowly, we'd cruise into the outskirts, rows and streets of houses, trees, cars, traffic lights. Wow, the big city. We'd start down this big hill, which meant we were seconds from downtown, where all the lights are bright. Well, it was high noon, but you get my drift. You know what I loved most about the big city? Pavement. Yeah. Pavement. Cement, too. Everything was either paved or cemented. There was no trail of dust behind the car. There was no mud. You know, if you lived in the big city, you wouldn't even have to own boots. You could just wear your sneakers all the time because shortly after it stopped raining, the pavement and cement were nice and dry. They had drains every few feet right on the street. Where does the water go? Who cares? It's gone. Pavement's dry, cement is dry. Mom and Dad's shoes made clip-clop sounds. I bet a bouncy ball, if you threw it down hard enough on the cement, it would bounce higher than that building. P.S. That building is so high, they have an elevator inside, and it's not a grain elevator. You know, years later, Joni Mitchell sang, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot, and I got it. But when I was 8, pavement. More pavement. Pave everything. Dad, why can't we pave our town? Only big cities can afford pavement, son. Wow, lucky. Downtown PA. Dad would park the car and feed the meter. Turns out Dad knew how to parallel park a car, a skill you didn't need in town. There seemed to be no end to his talents. I never really bothered to learn or figure out what Mom and Dad needed in the city. I hardly ever shopped with them. I did if it was for me, like new school clothes or school supplies. You know, school's in a couple of weeks. Better pick up some foolscap for the boy. Foolscap. Foolscap paper. I love the word foolscap. Shouldn't it be called smartscap? Yeah. If we weren't shopping for me, I was allowed to be out on my own. Oh yeah, alone in the big city. Mom needed to go here and there. Dad had to see a guy about a thing. Meet back at the car at 3. And of course, the car was never locked, so if you're the first one back, just sit and wait in the car. I didn't own a watch, but there were a lot of clocks around, and I knew how to tell time. I didn't know how to be on time, but that's okay. My folks always knew where to find me if they needed to. One of 3 places, Kresge's or Woolworth's, a block apart, in the toy section, or at the smoke shop at the back where they had a massive magazine stand. Usually the owner wouldn't yell at you to buy something or get out for like an hour. And if he didn't see you come in, you could camp out back there for days. We had a magazine stand at the drugstore in our town, but not like this. They had Mad magazines months ahead of time. Mad specials, and not just Mad, but all the other hilarious magazines like Sick and Cracked and Time. A few years later, on trips to PA, I began to notice these other magazines. Play Boy. I'm a boy. I like to play. What's this? I see. Oh, is it me, or is it getting warm in here? They had all these other magazines, too, made especially for people who like to sunbathe? Fantastic. But when I was 8, interesting but kind of gross. Where is Alfred E. Newman? Trips to PA meant I usually ended up with something, not clothes or foolscap, but something good like a new toy car or a new Mad magazine. Not both. You can get one thing. You'd better decide, mister. Sometimes we'd have lunch in a restaurant. And I'm not talking the counter at Kresge's, I'm talking table for 3, menus, waiter, living large. Thinking of it now, I'm sure it was more of a family restaurant or diner kind of place, but at the time, I'm downtown in the big city, eating in a restaurant with grown-ups. Yeah. You want to know what my go-to meal was? Veal cutlet, breaded, and chocolate milk. 2 things you just wouldn't ever have at home. Certainly not veal. What is veal anyway? Well, it's like beef, except it's the baby cow, like a calf. Is there pig veal? No, not really. How about baby chicks? Can you kill them before they're chickens and they'll taste different? No. How about baby fish? No, shut up. Eat your veal. Raised on a farm like my folks, there's no veal. You wouldn't kill a calf. Calf is good for like 20 meals. You'd wait till it was a big fat cow. Good for like 100 meals. Veal was just not practical. Big city folk had veal. One veal cutlet, breaded, and milk from the chocolate cow. Oh, that's right. Please. You're out with people now. There's pleases and thank yous to remember. You hate me right now, don't you? More pavement and more veal. Hey, I was 8. These things were somehow luxurious to me. After lunch, Mom had more shopping to do. Dad had one more guy to see about one more thing, and everyone hurried, because we had to be home before dark. Never understood why our car had working headlights, but okay. As we'd leave the big city, we'd pass the same cemetery, but Dad rarely went for the graveyard joke again. That was a drive-in to joke, not a drive-in from gag, I guess. There was a big sign on the highway that said, "Thank you for visiting Prince Albert. Please come again." Isn't that nice? Please come again. Yeah, well, PA, you keep the veal coming and I'll be back. You'll get my business. Oh, if we hadn't had lunch on that trip, we used to do one of two things that I loved. Obviously, much of my joy of going to the city involved food. We'd stop at this massive grocery store, like 100 times bigger than our store in town, maybe even 1,000. We'd buy bread and bologna and mustard and a big jug of some fruit drink, and Mom would make sandwiches in the car as we hit the road. Oh, that was terrific. But you know what I loved even more? Sometimes on the way home, we'd stop at this place called Kentucky Fried Chicken. Chicken all the way from Kentucky, brought in by truck, driven by an army guy in a white suit. Didn't even have to get out of the car. Food came in a bucket, all ready to eat. You also could get coleslaw and or potato salad and giant Pepsis, like giant ones. Like these would be the size Pepsis that a giant would drink. We'd have that on the way home in the car. Those were some greasy good times. Hey, what do I do with the chicken bones, Dad? Roll down your window and throw it out. Done. I always looked forward to the trip to PA, even though the trip took forever. We always seemed to get home pretty quickly, though. Maybe it was the bologna or the chicken, but also no stops for Dad. As a matter of fact, it was important on the way home to make good time. We're making good time, he'd say. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad, but sounds good. On rare occasions, we would stay over in PA at one of my dad's brothers or sisters' house. The grown-ups would drink and laugh and play cards. Us cousins all got to camp out with sleeping bags down in the rec room. Long after my cousins fell asleep and even after the grown-ups had passed out, I'd lie there awake. Even in the middle of the night, I could still hear cars, sometimes a siren, and even a distant train. I love that, way more than any crickets. Those city sounds were a magnificent lullaby to me. One day, I would live in a city. So I didn't accomplish everything I set out to do in my life. Who does? But I accomplished that. I lived and do live in a city. A big city. Not PA, mind you, but a big city. A city so big that many city folk dream of getting out to the country, at least for a weekend. I'm always, why would you want to do that? You live in a city. It's great. I have access to all the foolscap I'll ever need. As a matter of fact, I think a 24-hour foolscap store just opened up near me. As far as Pepsi and fried chicken, well, pretty much on every corner. And never mind not having to even get out of your car. I don't have to even leave the house. They'll bring it over. Oh, and I live like 10 minutes away from this enormous cemetery. Huge. You know how many people are dead there?
I Was 8 is a weekly series written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. A new episode every Thursday. Share your stories with Larry, or if you like, share Larry's stories with a friend. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Larry Fedoruk, that's Fedoruk, can be reached at larryfedoruk37@gmail.com.